Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Mobile Corner. I am your host Jimmy and I will be bringing you mobile games every week. Why mobile, you might ask yourself? Well, the reason is quite simple. Our phones and tablets have advanced so much in the last 5 years that they are rapidly catching up with PCs and consoles. The games themselves have advanced so much, and long gone are the days where we used to play Snake on our phone for 5 minutes just as a pastime. The concept of mobile games is that they are good to play on short bursts, but nowadays with the technology we have, they can also be very, very immersive and very, very fun to play. And we love games. So let's head into this week's game. Evoland is an odd experience. The premise of this game is that you're following a loose timeline of the evolution of RPGs over the years. It starts off in black and white and without sound, but in the first few minutes you'll unlock the basic elements of an 8-bit RPG, not unlike Legend of Zelda. As you find an open chest, you'll unlock movement, scrolling, sound, colors, a sword, monsters, save points, and a plot, very important. And off you go. The more chests you open, the more elements you'll unlock. Some of these chests will change the style of the game completely, as soon enough you'll find yourself on an overhead map. And yes, the much beloved Mode 7 is there too, and instead of real-time combat, you'll switch to turn-based combat. Oh yeah, it's Final Fantasy time. Now, I'll be honest, the game isn't very hard, but it isn't necessarily a bad thing. For those of us who are over 20-25 years old, we have probably played at least one or the other version of the games Evoland is based on. Personally, I only started playing them in the mid-90s on PlayStation and Nintendo 64, but damn did I want to go play some 8-bit goodness. Moving on, you'll reach a town and your first roadblock, but since you're still a child, the people won't talk to you until you find a way to become an adult, which again is another wink at Legend of Zelda. Once a grown-up, you'll learn you need better equipment to move on, which means you need a shop to spend the gliss you earned. There isn't much focus on the loot and gearing aspect, but again, the objective is to give you a taste of these RPGs. As you head out of town, you'll unlock a sidekick and 3D graphics. This is where the most enjoyable part of the game begins. You'll get to spend some time solving puzzles and avoiding death traps. You won't get stuck as they are not too challenging, but they are entertaining. Most of them require you to step on switches to open doors, bomb cracked walls, and hit targets with your arrows. The only annoying part is you'll do a lot of backtracking, which will take some time as you sadly don't have the ability to run. In the latter stages of the game, I was pleasantly surprised to see the game dip its toes into Diablo's dungeon crawling genre. This part was fairly challenging, mostly because dealing with a horde of mobs isn't always easy. Though if dungeon crawling isn't your thing, rest assured you can burn through this part pretty quickly. The most challenging parts, however, happen during combat, particularly early on when you can take more than one hit since you do not have a health bar yet. You'll face a few bosses along the way, but if you know the basics of the genre, you won't have much trouble figuring out how to beat them. As I already said, the game is fairly easy and you might want a bigger challenge, but from a certain point of view, why should it? Evoland is after all sort of a museum tour through history. It wants you to see all of its content, and although it doesn't want you to get bored, it doesn't want you to get stuck either. I think it might err a little bit too much on the side of caution, especially with its JRPG style sections, but I can appreciate what it's going for in that regard. Similarly, I completely understand its brief running time. It's only a few hours long at most, and while that's very short for an RPG and somewhat short for an action-adventure game, it's almost a little bit too long for Evoland. Still, Given how much the game is actually juggling, it's easy to forgive most of its quirks. The constantly changing rules and aesthetics generally do a good job of distracting you from getting hung up on any one part of it that doesn't work as well as you'd like it to. Even as it is right now, Evoland is well worth its €5. I've played so many things like it and nothing quite like it, and that's a hard trick to pull on an RPG fan like me. I'm happy the developers did things the way they did. The few sections of the game where it does spin its wheels a little too long are more than enough to demonstrate the value of a game knowing when to call it a day. I could go further into detail here, but I think that Evoland is one of those experiences best enjoyed as cleanly as possible, so I'll bring things to a close here. If you like RPGs, or Zelda likes well enough, you'll have a good time here. In spite of Evoland's shortcomings, I think the concept and presentation make it more than worthy of an 8 out of 10. Evoland brings us a metric ton of nostalgia, and for the younger generation an opportunity to discover the genre we grew up with and possibly even try the classics out for themselves. The fact Evoland has all these save points means you can just launch the game and play in short bursts. If you like this game, you might want to keep an eye open, as Evoland 2 is currently being developed, and although there is still no mobile version confirmed, we know it will be at least out on PC. And if it's PC only, well, I'm sure Hinkle can do us a nice little review. That's it for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that share button.